taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people of society? Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Will not to take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, 'cause I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying there.
Poor Paul has got a cold today. It's so bad that he's frozen. See what I did there? And
You've all frozen
so
now.
I think he'll be trying to sort that out. But at the moment, he looks tremendously handsome. But sort of the
Oh
heat.
no! On the live video, we're all frozen.
Yeah, we're all frozen.
No. Are we,
we're all
are we-
frozen,
can
and
you
I'm
hear
trying to
us?
deal with it. Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you hear us out there? Tell us if
Yeah.
you can hear us.
I don't know how
But,
to solve
yeah, we're
this
all
problem,
frozen.
but you know,
Just let us know if you can't hear us.
I think we can definitely
Anyway,
be seen, John.
Just one very bit of update news. I went out last week on a big I am Spartacus moment, sort of challenging the Labour Party to do something because I said the words about the anti-Semitism being used as a means of discipline. And you'll be glad to know that I have heard precisely nothing. So either the Labour Party is so slow that it hasn't got round to it yet, or sort of they accepted the points I made were absolutely correct, or much more likely, I'm so unimportant that it's just not worth bothering with me. So there we go. Sort of, there's so much to do today that I'm going to go straight to, we're going to be talking forever. Moment of the week. Paul, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that the people can hear us, but they think we're playing that game, Sleeping Lions. If we move, we're out. You'll lose connection. Let's see what we can do. Sam, moment of your week. Bless you.
Yeah, it's been, unfortunately, my electoral division is one that's been hit by all these power outages. So this is the 4th day with no power for some of my residents. So not really sort of a moment like to celebrate, but definitely something that's characterized my week so far is desperately trying to find ways to help people. Unfortunately, there has been no central point, and we did manage to get hold of a community centre. And as soon as we got set up in there, the electricity got cut off for there too. So it's been pretty dire. The schools stepped in the end, so that's really good. That gives us a firm base to start from, and hopefully the electricity will be back on soon.
I mean, people are saying that basically it's the antithesis of levelling up, that sort of this would never be allowed to exist in the home counties like it's being allowed to continue in the northeast. I mean, is it all Storm Arwen, do you think, or do you think that this is evidence of a lack of care about the northeast?
Well, you just got to look. I mean, I hadn't had a chance to really listen to the news or watch the news until about lunchtime today when I switched it on. And the amount of weight that it was given on the news was like, oh yeah, some people don't have electricity in the north. But if you look at the Northern Power Grid website, it's vast swathes of Northumberland. There's a lot of places in County Durham. There's a lot of places down the East Coast. It's huge, the amount of communities who have now been without electricity for a long time. So I understand that Northern Power Grid can only move as fast as they can move. But honestly, this is the point where you have to send the army in to provide humanitarian support for people. You know, we've gone beyond trying to send emergency generators to people who need oxygen. You know, even you've been really, really well organised and really well prepared, no one is prepared for 4 days in sub-zero temperature.
Okay, things are going slow here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play something for a second, and then we're going to be back very, 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 very quickly. So I'm going to switch over now and see if I can come back in. So 1 sec.
comes down to a fight between you and me, then you are doomed to lose.
Hi again. I think we're about ready to go. Give me a second and we might be just about ready to come back in, everyone. Sorry about that. I know what the problem was. It's a really, really weird one. But yeah, so I'm going to keep talking while I do a little thing. I do apologise, everyone. Do you know what it was? A dodgy piece of hardware. It was a dodgy camera. Cause all sorts of problems, yeah. Listeners can hear us now, by the way. So we're kind of back for a bit. Samantha's moment of the week. That's where we were, and then I've played a little bit of music, and then we are. I think we are back. There you go.
Right. Well, Sam, you and I had a real chat together. It was lovely chatting to you. Thank you. Sort of, I'm just going to ask you the final question, which nobody will got. Tell us about how the community in Shildon is sticking together and the kind of things that are happening.
So it's a lot of people, just doing what they can in their bit, which I think is the best you can do in these situations with nobody to coordinate and not even a central point to gather. But thankfully the primary school stepped up and they're providing shelter and food during the day, and they're happy to do that until the end of the week. So hopefully it won't take that long to get electricity back on.
And you've been out today.
Yes, and I've been out today because I'm just conscious there's people out there without social media, and a lot of this stuff's gone on social media. So it's just with little hand printed, computer printed, hand delivered little leaflets, just telling them where they can get hot food, access electricity, what my phone number is, what Durham County Council's phone number is, and what the school's phone number is.
And the other question we dealt with while we weren't being listened to by anybody is sort of, do you think that this is a failure of levelling up?
Yeah, I mean, you really struggle to see a world where this would happen in Surrey, don't you? Yes, we in the north, we do have some strong weather, but I think we can assume, as the way things are going, there's going to be a lot more extreme weather events happening. Because we seem to have an extreme and random and rare weather event every year now. So we really should be more prepared to distribute humanitarian support when it's needed, and to kick emergency services in. It hasn't been enough this time.
No, we need to be ready, and a lot better ready in the north than they actually are. Thank you, Sam. Stuart, you were telling me how Greggs is the centre of your campaigning strategy. Your moment of the week, Paul. Stuart, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost the centre of somebody's life. Even Greggs, it's that important. What it was is I was at a planning meeting for the Sanctuary Not Detention demonstration that's going to take place in Concert next Saturday,
Right.
Middle Street. And at the planning meeting, there was some really important stuff going on, proper stakeholders talking about every facet of this demonstration. And my contribution was asking how close the Greggs was to each end of the street.
It wasn't an obsession with food, though, was it, Stuart?
It wasn't about filling my own belly. It's based on the fact that if you stood near a Greggs, you get lots of signatures. And that is a tried and tested campaigning technique of mine that I should patent and, make a training video about, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, playing it for fun, but it's a really important campaign. Nobody wants the detention centre. It has a field. It's a pretty sorry idea that we're going to be detaining women in those conditions simply for trying to exist at this point.
It's the following idea, Stuart, and Laura's going to be talking about it at greater length later, I suspect, and bring it into her topic. But to sort of keep it quiet, because you're absolutely correct. Very often there's a queue outside Greggs, and the queue is a captive audience if you want to give a talk or anything like that. So don't let anybody know, and particularly don't put it out on the World Wide Web so everybody can get that idea. But that's just the best. Laura, moment of the week.
Well, I wasn't sure because I haven't been here for so long. I've had so many moments. But I was originally going to say, I saw this thing today where people are spending an absolute fortune on slightly darker makeup to put under their eyes because it's really fashionable to look like you've got bags now. I love the fact that I'm so on trend, naturally. But as it's political and muted, my moment of the week has got to be Keir Starmer's reshuffle. It's come out of nowhere. I'm sure he's preparing for government. And it was just, I won't talk about all the positions because we haven't got time. We wasted a lot with faulty hardware earlier. Apologies for that. But the fact that he sort of removed the Department for Employment rights, I feel like that is a bold statement to make, especially given that we seem to be moving further and further away from the trade unions, that he put out something about how we want to look after workers, so we'll talk to your boss kind of thing. It's just all feeling a bit, let's please just get away from all the Jeremy Corbyn years and everything that he stood for, and let's do things business-like. And it just felt a bit sad because I think a shadow secretary for employment rights, and indeed a secretary for employment rights, would be a wonderful thing to have. So it was really sad. I'm interested to see what direction this is going in.
Well, I mean, there was a thing on Labour List about it. Sort of the left has gone completely. That lady resigned, didn't she? Somebody because
Cat Smith. Yeah. Well, she was offered a position and she declined it.
Sort of, and the soft left, Labour List says, has been downgraded. Even Mandelson has lost business. He's still on the shadow cabinet, but they've reduced his
Miliband, I think you mean.
Miliband.
Mandelson's still in control.
Oh, no, yeah, Mandelson as well. Thank you very much for connecting me.
He's still the gaffer.
And then Yvette Cooper coming in as a Home Secretary, just a full blast Blairite shadow cabinet, and sort of so much for uniting the party. Paul, moment of your week.
Mine's just come in, so it's just come in. So many I could have chosen from, but this one is massive. The pilot of the Lolita Express, for those of you who don't know, the Lolita Express is the nickname of the aeroplane that Jeffrey Epstein used to fly to his little paedophile island on. It was called the Lolita Express because of the book Lolita. And apparently awful things went on there. Now, the pilot has just said publicly, and I've shared this story, and so Epstein's pilot is Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton and Trump flew on Lolita Express. This means they flew on the Lolita Express to get to that island. And anyone who actually went to that island admitted it. They've interviewed workers and stuff. They say there is absolutely no doubt that something really, really bad was going on in that island. So you can probably take whatever you want from that, but the idea that these incredibly powerful people were going around with this man, Jeffrey Epstein, and were flying on a plane to a paedophile island where it was quite clear what was happening, should worry us deeply. These connections, it's just very, very deeply worrying. And so that's I think we all knew that happened, but the idea that the pilot has now said that, and he's confirmed that he recognised those people. And you're talking different political spectrums here. I don't think it's a particularly different political spectrum, actually. It's very establishment. It's very, like, because like Peter Mandelson went belt shopping with Jeffrey Epstein before, and he
not
would
Miliband. No, not Miliband. Mandelson.
Not Miliband, Mandelson. No, Miliband wouldn't go belt shopping. No, not with Epstein anyway. So he, so yeah, that happened. So you've got Trump and you've got Bill Clinton, implicated in this, going to a paedophile island in a paedophile plane. Now, no one's actually. I'm very clear on this one. I'm reporting what the pilot has said. He went on that aeroplane. I am not saying that they did anything, but it looks quite worrying, doesn't it?
It's horrific, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. Wow, some amazing moments of the week there. Thank you very much for your insights, everybody. But you're right. Let's move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
I've not heard anything, Paul. Is this because we're waiting for it?
Yeah, it's just because I haven't checked. It's happened.
It happened, right?
It's done.
Oh, goodness.
I did my bit right, but I had to do a few things this side, so I'm not sharing my sound with you anymore.
Oh dear.
This show is just so professional. Laura, we put a poll out every Friday. The thing overwhelmingly you wanted us to talk about today was the migrant crisis, the dreadful tragedy of that boat sinking and those 27 people being was it 27 died, and then including women and children, whole families, just horrific, and then particularly the unholy row between France and Britain, and accused of playing politics about it all. Laura, have they been playing politics about it? Do they need to be ashamed of themselves?
Yes and yes, but that nothing changes. Isn't that always the case, especially with the Tories? So the problem with this is, so everybody will know by now that unfortunately 27 souls were lost at sea. They were, I assume, drowned. One of them was a pregnant woman, 3 of them were children. And so the response to this was for the French government and the Belgian government and a couple of others were getting together to talk about how do we stop this happening again. And instead of focusing on anything that might stop people needing to escape other countries or needing to make this horrible illegal journey that shouldn't be illegal, there should be safe legal routes to seek asylum, they've decided instead to focus all their attention on arresting and the criminals who were involved in trafficking these people. The problem we've got here is that Boris Johnson had basically sent 5 instructions to Macron in France via tweet. It was very, very Trumpian, not professional at all. And Macron was just beside. He didn't know about this letter that Boris Johnson had written to him until somebody told him about the tweet. The letter hadn't even been sent yet. And it was like, there's just this long letter just saying, you know what, let's just find a way to agree that you take them back to your country. We don't want them. What we'll do is we'll help with UK Border Force to patrol the seas and send people back to you. And with that came Macron's, okay, well, fine, don't bother coming to the meeting. So Priti Patel was uninvited to any discussions around this. And it's very much focusing on the wrong aspects, and yes, playing politics, because it's like they know that there are people who don't want to have refugees in this country, and so that they've planted their flag in the sand a long time ago on this one, to the point where actually there was a gentleman fisherman who actually pulled his boat in front of the RNLI to stop them going to help these people, to say, we don't want any more people here, there's no room, which I just find absolutely devastating. And I do, hand on heart, believe the Tories have perpetuated that and made that a lot worse, because, as always, they like to point the finger at the wrong people, and now they're trying to make this whole problem be as a result of, they said it's breaking business models of the criminal gangs that will stop this. I mean, that says everything, doesn't it? Let's stop the criminal gangs from being able to make money from trafficking these people. That's a symptom of the problem. It's not the problem itself. So yes, they're absolutely point scoring here. And one thing they've completely refused to even comment on, there were 2 survivors and they're now being treated for exhaustion and hypothermia, and that's all that's been said about them. Not to mention the fact that these 2 people are going to be traumatized for the rest of their life. They've just had to watch 27 people die, women and children, and we're just dehumanizing these people over and over again, and not even considering the impact of this on people as humans, just because they happen to be born in the wrong place, that it wasn't their choice to be born where they were born. People here should count themselves very lucky that they were born here. Well, the majority of them. I think things are getting worse and worse for us. But yeah, it's just all been a mess, and it's all been just dealt with really poorly, and focusing on all the wrong issues at the wrong time, when it could have been something that made us into better people.
Before I move on, it was Polly Toynbee in The Guardian who was saying that the only solution to this problem is the humane response. Would you agree with that then?
Absolutely. I think it's the only way to go. We've got to stop worrying about money and space. And the problem is, for too long, the Tories have pointed the finger at immigrants and migrants and refugees as the people who are taking all of our services away from us, the people who are causing us problems. So of course the people here are going to be a bit worried. The fact of the matter is, we've got an inept government who can't cope with the people they've got because they're not doing it properly, and they're too greedy. We've seen through COVID that they're far too bothered about making money out of the suffering of others and giving it to their friends. And that for me is just a fact. That's not my opinion on this. And we can get into my opinion. We've talked about kids washing up on beaches plenty of times on this show, and the fact that we're still in a position even now where that is acceptable and tolerable just makes me absolutely sick to my core. And the majority of people in this country would feel that way. I'm absolutely sure of it. So yes, we need to start looking at these people as human beings and remember that they've got feelings, they're scared. No one puts a child in a boat unless that boat has a potential to be safer than the place they're living in. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Sam, I mean, who do you think is more to blame then in this game of playing politics, Britain or France?
Well, this is really interesting because, but we were getting to a point where we were having these discussions with France over following this catastrophe that happened at sea, and Boris totally fucked it up, didn't he, by being an inept politician, right? I write letters to people all the time, and I know that you can't just publish that letter before they've even had a chance to reply to it, right? That's rude. That's not the way you deal with somebody who you actually want to work with, right? Because it's insulting. You're showing the world the letter that they're only just opening themselves, right? So I totally understand why that upset the French authorities and derailed our discussions with them. It's a difficult discussion in French politics, just as a difficult discussion in English politics about, who has responsibility over Calais, who, so I just think if we actually want to work towards it, like grown-ups with our European Parliament partners, we have to do it in good faith. We can't do what he did and expect for things to be fixed.
About this, what about this suggestion that we put our police in France to help to show the French how to do things properly, which they say is an assault on their sovereignty. We're not a vassal state, they say. I mean, do you think that's? Are you on the French side there against our government, or what do you think?
Well, I'm dead to say I'm on the French side, or I'll be marched out of town with pitchforks, won't I? I mean, you would have to be blind in the UK politics to not realise that we've just gone through basically a 6-year civil war over our sovereignty. So why do we expect another state to just let us march our border force in there and start telling them what to do? Of course they're not going to allow that. Of course, given the fact that we've just extracted ourselves quite violently from the EU, tried to have a fight with France over fish, and now we're coming around telling them how to guard their own border. Of course, they're not going to take that well.
I mean, one of the things that the French guy said was that in private, government officers talk to them, and it's very, very pleasant and polite. But when it comes to public statements and announcements, the British government is belligerent and hostile, and they find it very difficult to cope with British double talk.
What made me laugh, because I read the letter, and one of the things it asked for was to have a bilateral turn back agreement. So if immigrants come over from France, we can turn them back. And also, if France receives any immigrants from us, they can turn them back too.
Not long before people will be jumping in the channel to try to swim to France, I tell you. Paul, this is all part of a very set of draconian border rules and Patel's Nationality and Borders Bill, which they are saying is contradictory to international law. I mean, are you able to tell us about the bill and what it says? And so particularly these ideas of towing boats back to France and having a dual set of asylum seekers, those who arrived here by the proper channels and those who arrived here by sort of other means, sort of this dual kind of approach. But sort of, what's your attitude to basically Patel's Nationality and Borders Bill? Is it out of order?
Of course it is. It's a ludicrous piece of legislation that is against international law. Patel doesn't have a clue what she's doing. She doesn't know what's legal. She doesn't have any regard for that. And it's really interesting. A lot of this rhetoric comes from, I don't know, this generation of people who are looking forward, who are looking back to this halcyon days of Britain, where Britain ruled the waves and all this kind of stuff. And it's really interesting. And one of my options for moment of the week this week was to talk about Get Back, the documentary about the Beatles, which I watched this week. And there's a really interesting section in there where they're writing the lyrics to Get Back, and it was a political song criticizing people who were racist. Against people, who'd moved to this country. So the idea was there was this absolute, horrible person singing "Get Back" to where you once belonged, and that's how it started off. And the song kind of changed over time, but they were very, very pro immigration, pro peace and love, pro like treating other people like humans, and that was a bit of a halcyon days of Britain. And yeah, there were racist attitudes then. It was people like Enoch Powell. Now I believe that some people who look back to that as being this like model of brilliance now like don't actually realize that those sort of people that they wanted to that sort of atmosphere they want to recreate existed because people cared about one another and they didn't share these attitudes of getting back, and actually they would have been on the wrong side back then. And it's so I find that kind of interesting. With regards to what Patel's trying to do, I think she's just trying to play into this narrative. I think she like thinks the idea she'll get some more votes from people who are horrible if she behaves like this. I'm not sure what she believes as a human being. I don't think she really cares about that. I think it's all about political posturing. She can't do what she's doing. But at the same time, I don't think the EU are great with migration whatsoever. You know, like, they are being pretty horrendous towards migrants themselves. We've seen what's happened at the Polish border. What we should be doing as a country, what we should be doing as Britain, is if we really want to be proud of ourselves, why don't we rise above what the EU is doing and create safe passage? Because one of the things is, she's saying, oh, only the people who should be here should be able to come. But there's no safe passage. They haven't created any routes to allow safe passage, and that's the whole problem with it. So you're basically saying you can only come if you're allowed to come, but you're not allowed to come. So they're pretending to be good people and saying, oh, well, if you do things legally, then that's fine. Well, there's no way, there's no passage, there's no such thing as illegal immigrant anyway. Like, you know, you can't be illegal, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it illegal to come to a country. What you should be doing is creating safe passage and then saying, right, okay, like, you know, maybe register somewhere else in another country and say, right, you're coming to Britain. You've got relatives in Britain. I know you can bring something good to our country. I know that you will, like, have a good... And then you know what's going on in your country. Like, surely that would appease people who want to have control of the borders. That is a much more controlled way. Allowing people in a sensible way where you know who they are, you know that they're going to have a safe place to stay, you know they're going to be able to work legally rather than being trafficked or rather than being in modern slavery or whatever. You know, that is a much better outcome for everyone.
That's coming up more and more and more. Just finally, Stuart, to you. One of the articles in The Guardian suggested that draconian border rules don't work, they only cost lives. Do you think that sums up the feeling of the team as they discuss this? What's your view on the whole thing?
I mean, absolutely sums it up. We know how to solve this. Having accessible routes for people to come to Britain to seek asylum, you know, that is safe. That's how we stop boats. The increase in boats is because we've cut off the safe routes. That's the only reason we're seeing an increase in boats.
Yes.
Because, you know, asylum seekers, the levels are down on the last 20 years because we've been cutting our routes, because we've been, you know, making it less easy, which has led to more people, you know, taking the unsafe option, which has led to the criminality and the exploitation that's going on. We can change that in an instant by just making a safe route, a safe passage. And there's absolutely no feeling in the government that that's something that we should do.
No. I sort of, if I can just support you on that, I think that those deaths are directly down to the policy of the British government, which basically forces people who want asylum in this country to take that dangerous journey. That's the only way, because they say to get asylum, you've got to put your foot on this country, and there's no other way people can get in. Sort of horrific, a shame to be British. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's move on. Right, I think I'm getting the nod from Paul that we can move on. Sort of big crisis in the House of Commons. Stella Creasy was told she couldn't take her baby into the debate. Sam, tell us what you think of that.
Okay, so for context, Stella Creasy has taken her baby into the House of Commons before. It's not really been a problem, and this happened after she took him into a Westminster Hall debate. She got a letter afterwards saying, "Oh, you're not really allowed to do that." So, and on the face of it, a lot of people saying, "Well, that's fair. I can't take my baby into work at the Amazon warehouse, so why should she be allowed to take her baby into work at the House of Commons?" Except for the fact that MPs don't get maternity leave. Okay, so you can. Kevin says there's too many children in the House of Commons already. You don't get maternity leave as an MP. You can, as she has done, employ a locum MP. So she's got somebody who is helping her with the constituency work, who is able to talk with her gravity in lots of meetings, but only the elected MP can sit in Houses of Parliament and vote for that constituency. That's not her fault, and that's not anybody's fault who has a baby. So it's ridiculous. Top and bottom of it's ridiculous. There's no, we're not talking about a baby that's causing a huge issue. If I've had other people say, "Oh, these things happen late at night." Unless, just a bit of a news flash for people, babies don't like sleeping at night anyway, so she's not keeping this poor bairn awake, and actually having him in a sling on her allows him to feel comforted and probably sleep, where if she put him in the House of Commons nursery, he'd probably just cry the whole time. So it makes loads of sense for her to use a sling in the House of Commons and keep a baby with her. It's just a ridiculous thing that they now having to review the rules of the House of Commons and decide whether babies are in or babies are out.
Can I ask some questions about that then?
Go for it.
Concentration, sort of, how can she concentrate properly on the debate when she's also looking after a baby at the same time?
Well, if you've seen any of the videos of her looking after her baby in the House of Commons, like I said, he just seems to be asleep. He's asleep in a sling, and he's totally happy and content. I assume if he was awake and he was fussy, she would take him out. But also he's breastfed, so actually the calmest time you get as a baby of a small mother of a small baby is when you just sat on a chair feeding him. There's no reason she can't be attentive to a debate while she does that, and he'll be totally happy.
I mean, if you went to the doctor and you started telling the doctor about one of your diseases that you'd got, and you wanted the doctor to be listening carefully to as you described your symptoms, and the doctor was diddling a baby while they were talking to you, would you be happy with that, Sam?
I think, not to denigrate the role of a member of parliament at all, but I don't think they need the same level bedside manner as a doctor. It's a totally different setting. Let's face it, the whole process of the House of Commons is largely theatre. Most of the time they know if they're getting up to speak and they know what they're doing, and it's just about being in the right place at the right time to make the one point that you've got to make. You sit there for hours to make one point for your constituents. The point is, you're the only person in the country who can do that. And again,
that's a major issue. Yes.
Yeah, it's not your fault. That's the way the system's set up, but it is the way the system's set up. So why should the constituents of Walthamstow be disadvantaged?
I mean, however, the other side is that, don't you think that it does denigrate the role? I mean, here we are, we're talking about, it just comes at the wrong time, does this, the time when we're saying MPs can't have a second jobs, they shouldn't be having second jobs because this is such an important role. But apparently, it's a role you can juggle with childminding at the same time. Do you not feel that it denigrates the importance of that moment when you go into that? Do you not think it's basically telling your constituents, this isn't as important a job as you thought it was?
Well, no, but like I said before, if you think that that has to happen, if you think the baby needs to be taken out of Parliament, then we need to put procedures in place so that those constituents can be heard and somebody can vote on behalf of that constituency, right? That's not a system that's been designed by Stella Creasy. However, I do think that we need to break down some of these barriers and make babies more visible in public life, actually, because we've got to accept that having babies is a normal part of human existence, and that having a baby is not a disability, and people can broadly go about their normal lives, because it's that kind of idea that you can't do something while looking after a small baby that disadvantages women all over the place. I ran 3 businesses while looking after and breastfeeding small babies. Never stopped me.
So, and just one last thing. Do you not think that this is an issue of class, that here we have a woman who's paid £85,000 a year and a very unonerous job to do? And you mentioned it yourself, that sort of people at checkout in Tesco and people who are running around in Amazon. So do you think this is a class issue, and that this is something that middle class women in posh jobs can posture about, and working class people just do not have the opportunity to be able to do things and talking this way?
I mean, you're right, and would it be appropriate in the same way for somebody who works at a checkout to bring a small baby with them? No, but maybe that means that we've got to be even more voracious in fighting for their right to take time off with their babies. We know that the vast majority of birthing parents tell us they want to breastfeed, and a lot of them don't end up doing it because they've got to go back to work, because workplaces don't allow them to meet their baby during their break, or don't allow them to pump, or there's so many things that we need to break down. All I'm saying is, if you don't want a baby in the room, give people appropriate maternity leave.
Thank you. Spot on, Sam. Thanks for those answers. Laura, I suspect now you're about to explode. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say the question, and then I'm going to step back and just let you go for it. What's your view on all this?
I mean, it's largely similar to Samantha's. A couple of points I want to make. Actually, before Stella Creasy, you weren't allowed a locum. She was the first person to ever be allowed a locum MP to cover for her while she was on maternity. So, we're really behind the times here. And, you mentioned there about, is it a class issue? If we can't even get the people who have, respectable and all of that higher paid jobs sorted with decent childcare, or enable them to take their children in with them, and that this is still an arcane concept, then what hope have we got for sorting it for anybody else? There is none. Surely we have to start somewhere. It feels very, very much like discrimination to me, because women have been discriminated against for forever. And it's women who have the babies, and still women who have the care and responsibilities disproportionately affecting them. Most MPs are men, so this conversation doesn't happen that often. I see Liz Kendall's just about to have a baby as well through a surrogate. Is she not going to be allowed to bring her baby in? It shouldn't be a difficult conversation. And you can't now use, well, can they concentrate if they've got a baby, as a real well thought out argument when you've got MPs falling asleep on the benches. They're not paying attention. So, if you want to have an open debate about it, we've got to talk about that as well. Do people really care? Also, Stella Creasy and anybody else who has children, they're just not given the facility. If they want to represent their constituents that they've been elected to do, they have to be there. And I'd argue that the concentration thing, with a 3-month-old baby, I'd be much more able to concentrate if that baby was with me than in a room across Parliament somewhere, didn't know who was looking after it. If it was crying, if it needed me, I'd be much more able to concentrate if it was with me. So that whole argument just can be blown out of the water immediately. The Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, he kind of was like, hang on a minute, I'm not sure about this. Maybe we need to have a look at these rules. So there is an investigation ongoing. But what really struck me about all of this was that Stella Creasy hasn't really been given a great deal of support, even from our own party, to the point where Keir Starmer has said, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on this while they're looking at the rules. And I just think that's so sad, because surely we all need to come together. We all need to work together, unite the party, unite women, unite parents in this discussion. So I found that really sad, because she's been very loyal to Labour. She's worked really hard. She was the person behind the Make Misogyny a Hate Crime movement in Parliament, and I do find it really sad that we do seem to be behind the times. And I think, this should be the starting point of the conversation to change things for the better, not to take us backwards.
I think that's the absolute key point. Thank you so much for that, Laura. Paul, a bit of mansplaining needed here. Do you agree with Dominic Raab, who says that, quite frankly, Parliament just needs to come into the modern world? He agreed with Stella Creasy and says Parliament needs to come into the modern world. So are you a Dominic Raab supporter in this, Paul? Paul, you're muted. You're muted.
I was really funny as well, wasn't I? I could hear you all laughing.
That was hilarious, Paul.
Yeah. I did say...
Start from a stopped clock.
Okay, I did say that a stopped clock is right twice a day, and the stopped clock of Dominic Raab is correct on this occasion. Stella Creasy is doing something quite important at the moment, which is being a mother in Parliament, and whatever parent you are in Parliament, how in the world are you going to change the rules for people who are working if the people who are making the legislation don't care about this kind of thing? Like, they've all had nannies and whatever. Actually, I'll pass my kid off to a nanny. She's bringing up her child herself, and that kind of voice is incredibly important. As well as agreeing with Dominic Raab, which I didn't think I would ever do. I'm also going to agree with Peter Hitchens, who said this. She said, I think she has a point about bringing her lovely, well-behaved baby into the House of Commons. Lots of MPs have been drunk some of the time in that chamber. Many more have been stupid all the time. If Miss Creasy's baby started crying, it would show more sense than is contained in many parliamentary speeches. Personally, I think raising the next generation is more important and respectable task than full-time politics. But if she wants to combine the two, I'm not going to criticise her for it.
Stuart, round us up on this. Basically, we've got a full house from the team. Are you in agreement with the rest of the team on that as well?
Yeah, obviously, I think it's a really big thing. Not because Westminster sets the tone for the whole nation. That's what it's about. And we've just gone through a whole process where you're working at home. You've got your kids at home. We had homeschooling. We've got people who work at home, 3 days a week with kids at home, bringing kids up. This is just the new normal. This is where we're going to be moving to in the future, right? Why is it a hard thing to drag Westminster into the future? Surely they should be setting the tone for, the workplaces of the future. And there's absolutely no movement on that whatsoever, is there? I mean, there was no issue the first couple of times that baby went into the hall, was there? There was nothing. It was just somebody. You know what? It's a little bit weird that people get to mix their home life and their work life.
At the moment, we have one exceptionally well-behaved baby that basically sleeps the entire period of time. And move forward into a future where we have, and it would be absolutely correct, sort of that we have an awful lot of MPs, female MPs, who have babies, children who are babies and toddlers, and sort of we have a number of children behaving, and if you've ever been to church, you know what it's like. Sort of now, think forward to a future like that. Is that an acceptable future, or is that something that we would have to take? There would have to be something like a creche or childminder or something like that.
But I mean, we had a way of doing this. We had Zoom. We had them making their contribution from home, and then, you know, the childcare was dead easy. But that was taken away, and it was, you know, regressed back to what it is now. That's, you know, that's the real issue. We have mechanisms to adapt our, you know, work life and our home life, and the weird merge and, you know, cross entanglement of that's happening right now in workplaces across the country, in local authorities, in healthcare. This is taking place right now, and this just refusal.
Spot on, and thank you so very much. Sam, you wanted to come in there, did you?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no risk at all of the House of Commons becoming a creche, right? Because, I mean, let's face it, we're about to abolish all women shortlists in the Parliamentary Labour Party, which means that we're going to go back to have our House of Commons, which is populated mostly by men, right? The Conservative MPs are mostly men, and the Labour MPs are just 50-50. And we're about to ruin, anyway, that's not the point. The point is, there is a creche that people can put their kids in if they want to, but a 3-month-old baby who is breastfed, there is no place better for him than on his parent, and that is where he's going to be restful, and he's going to be sleeping, and he's not an obstruction. I take my children into meetings if I have to, and I will continue to do so if I need to, and the oldest one's 10, right? It doesn't cause any problems. Because and if it did, I wouldn't. But, you know, I regularly took my 3-year-old daughter into any daytime meetings I had, and it shouldn't be a problem because, like, well, in that circumstance, I was in a voluntary position as a town councillor.
Thank you. Sort of absolutely spot on, everybody, and well done, Dominic Raab. I think Stuart's hit the nail on the head. We have to move into the future, and we have to find ways that these things can happen properly, and that mothers with young children can play a full role and do so without being made to feel that they're somehow in the way. Thank you very much. Wonderful. We're running out of time, everybody. We've got 2 more topics. I thought that was good, though. I enjoyed listening to you all. Thank you so much.
Should we go a little bit past the hour, given that we had a few minutes?
Well, we can, but we're still way short for our last 2. Paul, talk to us about the sort of Priti Patel quietly adding further measures to the policing bill. Just tell us all about it, and sort of I'll quiz you about it.
Okay, so there was a police and crime bill, I believe it's called, that Parliament passed, sort of like it's got through to its like second reading, and now it's through to committee stage, which means they're trying to amend it, and it was absolutely draconian. And the more liberal Conservative MPs were saying, "Oh, don't worry about all that, like no right to protest and things like that, because these are going to be some of the most harsh anti-protest laws in the world. It's the kind of thing that dictatorships would maybe be a little bit like, oh, I don't know if we could do this. I'm not sure if we would get away with this. You know, it's pretty draconian. But the more liberal Tory MPs, if they exist, such as David Davis, were saying, oh, you know, it'll come to committee stage and we'll get rid of those really nasty pieces of it, and it'll be all in one, it'll be fine, so you can vote it through. Well, what's actually happening is it's getting worse at committee stage, and they're now going to bring in things like if they think you might be carrying super glue, or actually even if they don't, even if for any reason they want to search you, then you can just be searched at any time, stop and search for any time, for any reason. And there's a sort of an ASBO equivalent for people who they think might be creating a public nuisance. So they're basically making protest pretty much illegal and prosecutable. So there are prison sentences and things for doing protests. What they're doing is they're saying what they're doing is saying any form of protest or any form of intention, a thought about a protest is illegal, is criminal. And we are now at the stage where things like, okay, this is getting really, really serious now. If you look back to the suffragettes, people talked about the suffragettes. What the suffragettes did was illegal. But they started going in. I think what people think is, well, if it's illegal for us to protest peacefully, such as Gandhi did, maybe we'll do other things. And I actually think things escalate. When you make freedom of expression illegal, when you make protest illegal, people have no choice but to go something else. Well, if that's going to be illegal, I may as well go to the next stage. I think it encourages a more violent form of protest, because people will not be repressed, or people should not be repressed. There will always be an uprising against it. That uprising, in my view, should always be peaceful, and there should always be an outlet for peaceful protest, no matter what it is, which is why I've never been against the idea of people being like protesting against the vaccine passport or even the vaccine or whatever. Just go and have a free expression of your beliefs and go home afterwards and be safe, and or if you need to, keep going with this thing. What would they do to the guy who's on hunger strike at the moment? You know, is he disrupting people? You know, it's a massive worry, and this country is becoming a scary place in that regard. So I think everyone across the political spectrum should be worried about this.
I mean, just reading out some of the things, this bill would make it a crime to cause serious annoyance to the public. And included in that is making enough noise to be alarming to any other member of the public not involved, with a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Sort of 51 weeks for not complying with the stop and search order, 51 weeks for blocking transport works, including roads, rail lines, or airport runways. 51 weeks for locking on, that means supergluing yourself or handcuffing yourself, or some people have suggested just linking arms, and sort of 51 weeks imprisonment. And you just absolutely terrifying. Sam, what they're saying is that this isn't about making safe protest. This is about state control. Agreed? It
is a worry, isn't it? That thing about making a noise which is alarming, how that is not measurable. That's not something that, we can use a scientific test to say, well, this one is alarming and this one isn't. So this one's legal, this one's illegal. It's arbitrary, which is what worries me the most. And also, it's part of our culture, isn't it? That we've got the freedom to do things that annoy people to show that we're unhappy about something. I think I understand why people get frustrated with protests which stop them going about their daily business. But unfortunately, sometimes you've got to do things to make people pay attention to you. And now I'm not saying, I generally disagree with most things that like Extinction Rebellion have been doing. And I'm not the type of person who's going to super glue myself to a road, but I might follow somebody around with a megaphone being very alarming towards them if they are, for example, standing on the street corner with a Bible, doing some preaching which is actually homophobic, transphobic. I have no problem alarming those people, and if that's going to land me in prison, well, that's a bummer.
I don't think it's as frightening as £10,000. when you get to my age, going to prison is not as alarming as dipping into your savings. Laura, massive impact on the GRT community, the police and policing bill, as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, not just them, but like the whole an array of people, Muslim people, Black people, just anybody with any sort of minority about them. It feel like it's carte blanche to just sort of get them off the street, get them out of people's way. You don't need to be seen, kind of thing. And the thing is, there's a lot of people who do think that the GRT community, when they, find somewhere to settle for a bit, that's a nuisance. And this is just given powers to people to accept that and go, yeah, you're right, it's a nuisance, let's get rid, or put them in prison. And it's discrimination at best. And it's terrifying. It's not okay. And this whole idea of reasonable grounds, what arrest someone if you've got reasonable grounds to think they might have something or they might do something, like that just opens the door to.
One person said to more Sarah Everard protests, Sarah Everard vigil moments, it just opens the door.
Yes, absolutely. And it allows the police and whoever else is enforcing that to get away with, well, murder, essentially. Let's call a spade a spade. It's just, it's scary. And the fact of this is that it wasn't a big change in legislation that was debated, it was snuck in through the back door because Priti Patel knew for a fact that it was not the right thing to do and that there'd be uproar and kickback about it. So let's just sneak it in where the journalists don't watch and where people aren't going to get interested, and we'll just put it through. And then essentially what we're doing is criminalising protest and turning democracy into a dictatorship, and we're not allowed to do anything about it.
I'm so sorry to be tough on everybody. Stuart, two things very, very quickly. First of all, do you think that this was why Boris made such a mess of that speech, that it was an intentional thing to distract people from, so everybody we were talking about him and not about this?
I think that was just genuine incompetence.
Thank you. I agree. And secondly, this is horrific. This is really an assault. Liberty call it oppression by design. It is the most massive assault on our civil liberties. We won't have any civil liberties when this comes through. We may get away with it. The police may not enforce it, but they will have the right to just deprive us of the right to protest. What can we do as human beings now to try and stop this draconian legislation being forced through by this exceptionally right-wing government?
I would imagine protest would be a good one, wouldn't it? We've got to push it back any way we can. It's horrific across the board. It could be used against people out caroling in large numbers. It could be used against a circus. It's so, broad and vague. And I think its only purpose is to be able to do more with less police officers. So it's not about protecting anybody in the slightest. It's 100% designed to justify stripping away the resources of, good, honest, bobbies on the beat, looking after your communities type policing, and shifting it into this whole make everybody so scared. It's a Robespierre type fear is the policy moment.
Thank you, Stuart. Right, everybody, we're out of time. We had another topic what we wanted to discuss, and it was Stuart going to lead off on it. And it's basically was just about whether the government's making complete pig's arse of COVID at the moment, and what we feel about it. But with your support team, we have run out of time. Can we make that our big story next week? I'm sure it'll be just as chaotic next week as it is at the moment, round that up. Can I say to all those people who have been commenting. Thank you for your very vibrant comments, which Samantha will be dealing with after the show, in the second half of the show. Thank you to the team. It is such a privilege week after week to come and listen to you talking such sense and sort of educating people, and particularly me, about how we need to be thinking in this modern world. And to those of you who can't come back for the second half, goodbye. Thank you for listening to us. Those on podcast, thank you. Let's say goodbye and play a little bit of Joe Solo. Bye-bye.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say. And around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. And around the rear we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first. And around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no place around here today. Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello, we're back. Look, I've got a Christmas jumper on. Hey, it's got little pom-poms on it. That makes it special. I've not been a fan of the whole Christmas jumper thing because I really don't like disposable fashion. So I've decided I'm going to wear this for the next month. And get the most out of it, and then wrap it in acid-free paper and wear it all of next December as well, until either I or the jumper expire. Welcome back to our second part, the second installment of Socialist Think Tank, where we all go slightly mad and unravel before your very eyes. You know what we didn't talk about in the show? Masks are back. Woo! Doesn't feel like 10 minutes since we already had masks, but we've got masks again, even though some of us never stopped wearing them. But some people, despite the fact that people like me never stopped wearing them, some people are really up in arms about having to wear them again.
I'm not sure it's just the mask wearing though. I think it's the kind of the way everything's been dealt with. It's bizarre. Like, you know, when they're saying, oh no, there's a new variant, it's called Omicron, which just happens to be an anagram of moronic, apparently, which everyone's picked up on, like, even though it's like the next letter in the Greek alphabet, and people think it's a conspiracy theory there. But then what they're saying is that the virus might be resistant to the vaccine, therefore it's massively important that you get your booster. And it's like, that is let's just say the messaging on it is bizarre, absolutely bizarre, and it has been all the way along. And I am not surprised that a lot of people have no confidence in this process, no confidence at all. And that's what's happened. We talked about this a lot, like in the middle of it, the way people didn't have confidence because, like, you know, when we see the graph of like what's happening in the country, and it's like, oh, every time there's a half term, there's a really strange dip in the number of cases, and then after that there's a dip in the number of deaths. It's almost as if schools play a role in transmitting this. And it was like, nah, actually, we may want to stop the spread of the virus, but not enough to have to deal with our own kids at home for a few weeks. It's like, it's always been that, and I think that's what people have a problem with, and people are sick to death of the messaging. So I don't think it's about mask wearing. I think it's about the whole picture, and people are sick to death. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're getting in the comments. Ruth says no objection to wearing a mask, but the fact I have to wear one in a shop but not in a pub makes no sense. Neil says I'm happy to wear a mask, but the rule makes no sense because I have to wear it on the train to the football match, but in the busy pub and the match I don't have to wear it. It is just, and I'm reminded about the beginning of the pandemic when the government actually told us it was more dangerous to wear a mask than to not wear a mask, because in order to put the mask on you would be touching your face.
You're allowed to visit a museum without a mask until you go into the museum shop, upon which you have to put on a mask in the museum shop.
Is this just like a capitalist thing where they've realised we're going into Christmas and they need to protect our transport workers and our shop assistants as our first line? We can't let them get poorly, and that's why it's only their workplaces that we're doing it. It's now... And the rest of us
giving them too much credit,
very
Stuart,
positive
honestly.
reading of the situation.
You're giving them far too much credit. I'm just saying, like, Stuart's giving them far too much credit. I don't think there's a plan here at all. It's just like, what makes it look like we're doing something? Oh, you've got to wear a mask in shops. Like, wearing a mask in a shop is not going to affect people's lives very much. It is the most minimal thing you can do. Like, I think a sensible thing to do, if you really wanted to reduce the spread or whatever, would be, you know, maybe open up more buildings so they can be used as schools, have more staff. That kind of thing is where you need to do it, because a lot of the spread is coming from people being in closely populated areas. The other thing as well is, like, at this point, having people being vaccinated, this is it. This is life. At some point, we're going to have to just get on with it. And I think about people who are in my family who are still really, really scared of the whole thing, and we're about to start thinking, well, actually, this is life, and then the new variant comes out. No, I'll be away. Like, there'll be people who simply aren't living life anymore, and they're waiting for something to change, and I don't think this is going to change massively. And if you look as well, as every time there's a new variant, the death rate from that variant has about halved, which is quite a positive thing. The new variant means less likely in general. In general, this is the way viruses kind of evolve. They evolve to not kill the host, basically, over time. And maybe that's where we are. Maybe it's going to be a bit better. We're going to have to hope it is, aren't we? Because the government aren't going to deal with it. We are stuck with it. So we've got to hope that that nature takes care of us rather than the government, because they're not going to.
Well, we've been here loads before. We've had this same conversation continuously over the last 2 years. The medical expert, is it Susan Hopkins? I want to say, that might be wrong. Correct us if I'm wrong, but she was saying this is the most worrying variant they've ever seen. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer and I'm not like a conspiracy theorist, but that was a bit like, whoa, shit. But actually, what she meant was the transmission rates are really, really high. Really high. It's dead easy to catch, but no one's being hospitalized. There may be people dying. I don't like diminish that, but it's nowhere near as bad in terms of death rate or hospitalization as the other ones. It's just that it moves around the population quickly. Well, so does the cold. And I'm just like, the thing about these rules, Paul, you're absolutely right. It's just like, right, we need to make it look like we care. How can we do that? We'll tell people to wear masks. They've proven time and time again that they simply don't care. And the fact that anybody could think anything other than that at this point really is beyond me. They don't care. They're just trying to show us that they're trying to do something. That's it. It's ridiculous. And people are sick of it. People are just like, now when you tell people to wear masks, they're just like, oh, for God's sake, well, what's that going to do? Just like, people are bored of this whole thing now, and the way it's been handled has been absolutely just depressing to watch. So,
I've got an important question.
Go on then, Stuart.
My town council, the council hall, Hutton House, sells poo bags for 60p each. Do you have to mask up if you're buying them? And then it's fine if you want to go see a counsellor.
Are you standing or seated?
It could be.
Because I remember at one point in meetings you were allowed to be standing. No, so you weren't. You had to wear a mask while standing, and while seated you could take off your mask. So is that a thing as well? It's honestly no wonder people are sick to death of the whole thing. Like, this is just, it's been so silly for so long.
Have you talked about what they've said in schools? Sorry, I was late back to the party. But like, they want teachers to wear masks in corridors, but not in the classrooms. COVID doesn't knock on the door to get into classrooms, you see. It stays in the corridors. I mean,
it's tremendously polite. It does know not to come into classrooms, and it does
to disturb the lesson.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to disturb learning, but when you go out into the corridor, you have to put the mask on because it lingers in corridors. It's sort of like a weird ethical poltergeist. So yeah, honestly, that's happened before. So that's what we were doing before. Yeah. we used to laugh about it. So this is why like, so my colleagues now, we all think we're immune to it because like we've had it so many times. I think we've had it lots of times, to be honest, all of us. But
Well, you've brought it home to me at least twice, so
but then didn't give it to you. Then when you had it, I didn't get
you
it.
didn't get it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, because of my ultra exposure to it all the time. But we've just been laughing at it for ages. We're like, oh, let's put our mask on because we're going in a corridor. Honestly, it's just silly. You know, not the people caring about what happens in COVID, but the whole response to it and the whole pretending that they care and the whole, yeah, it's been nonsense.
There were some very humorous comments about babies in Parliament that went down the exact same route as you would expect them to. Neil said the baby had more dignity than the Tory benches. Neil also said it was nice to see someone else in the chamber with the same IQ as Boris Johnson and the same temperament too.
I don't know. I thought the baby seemed quite calm.
Yes. Jane said harsh on the baby, Neil. The baby was much better behaved. Absolutely. Neil got all the good points and the funny jokes. Neil says Caroline Lucas recently made a good argument on Question Time about allowing job shares for MPs. There's an awful, I mean, let's face it, being an MP is basically two jobs. You've got all the constituency work and all the parliamentary work. And then on top of that, you're managing the office of your staff who do a lot of work on your behalf. So it is huge. So anything that we can do to allow these people to have a little bit more of a work-life balance is actually reasonable. It's not just all about babies, is it? It's about caring for relatives, which, you know, a lot of MPs still have to do just because they're humans, just like the rest of us. The fact that our MPs have a huge time burden in terms of travelling up and down the country that MPs closer to London don't have. Go on then, John.
Just to say, if you go on to iPlayer, BBC Sounds, there was a very amusing little sketch on the Now Show last week from a woman arguing that the answer to a lot of this is to pay MPs more. And in the course of what was a very funny little sketch, she made a number of good points worth listening to.
No.
The other thing about MPs though, isn't it, like, it can be a really difficult job and it can be a really important job. It can also be a job that you have as your second job, and you can work as a lobbyist as your main job and also use it to get access to Parliament if you don't particularly care, and you know, like, a lot of people know that they will get elected time and again. So it really is whatever, like, not all MPs work hard. Not all MPs care about the things that they're supposed to do. So when you're saying, Samantha, that it's two jobs, yes, if done properly. Actually, it's impossible to do fully properly. But it seems to be the ones that do absolutely now have no problems whatsoever, and the ones who do things tend to get a lot of criticism for not doing more. Like, for example, like, you know, and the things people do voluntarily. Like yesterday, I put something up that our county councillor had done, put some new railings around our miners' memorial, and the first reply was, "What are you going to do about the dog poo?" Like,
yeah.
I was like, well, you can report dog poo here. And they're like, do you think I've got time to do that? It's like, well, do you think I do? And the other thing is, as well, is if you've got time to complain about on Facebook, you've got time to fill in that form. And one of them's useful and one of them isn't. So, honestly, man, people are just... Yeah. The more you do, the more people criticise.
I'm feeling that at the moment.
Talking about Parliament, I think, do you not think that the decision on Geoffrey Cox is an absolute setback on decency and the reputation of Parliament? Everybody could see him breaking the rules. He was there saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to," in his office, "I'm going to have to go because I've heard the bell, I'm going to have to leave you now." Absolutely caught red-handed using his parliamentary office to do outside work, absolutely in contravention to the rules. and we decide there's not enough evidence to deal with him. And do you not think that is just... the rest of us just think, what's the bloody point? What is the point? These people make the rules for themselves, disobey their own rules, and then when they get caught, change the rules to say that they don't have to obey the rules that they set for themselves. And then you wonder about all these Q conspiracy theorists, it's horrific.
Yeah.
It's no surprise people get upset, is it?
No.
But it's just scorn. They just write them off. They write the whole system off. Politics is dirty. It's disgraceful. They're not fit to rule. And they're all the same. They're all the same. And the decent ones are tarred with the same brush as the criminals. Horrific.
And unfortunately, when you've got stories about the Trumps and the Clintons, or not the Trumps, or the Trump and the Clinton having parties with Jeffrey Epstein, unfortunately, that is also a brush we all get tarred with. I've been called a paedophile because I'm a politician. You know, it's unfortunately, people really do think we are all like that, and we are all, you know, fiddling the books and getting extra money on expenses, and like, really not rich enough. Please pay attention to the rags that I wear and know that I am not creaming anything off anywhere. Stuart, you wanted to come in.
Well, I mean, it was back to dog poo, and in Chiltern we've been doing a history thing, and we've been going back through the archives and all these letters I found, and I've got like 100-year-old letter. It's about dog poo gone to the council. It's not changed one iota in 100 years. People were complaining about it now, you know, then, and they'll complain about it in 100 years' time, I'm sure.
Boom.
It's a bit weird though. What do they think we do? Like, do they think it's our job? So I've got to come back from work and patrol my entire village. Look out for dog poo. Make sure it's reported. That's the point of what I do locally, is it?
Somebody took the time to write a nice letter, put it in an envelope, stamp on it, posted it, you know, rather than just tackle the problem. And that's good. That's going to carry on for a long time. Like, yeah, you know, it's that's not going to change, is it?
I'm going to defend the people. Not that I didn't get very stressed about it when I was a councillor, but there are a whole set of issues which are caused by the lack of responsibility of certain members of the community. So, you know, if you let your dog loose, or you take it for a walk and you don't pick it up, that is caused by lack of responsibility. There's endless similar problems, aren't there? Boys going around on quad bikes and motorbikes, churning up the grass, people who park on the grass, people who flight it. It's all to do with individual members of the community. And so you're talking about policing the community, and it's impossible to stop because there are always going to be people who have no care for the community at all, and sort of who, through either carelessness or ignorance or their own deliberate fault, break what would be caring attitudes towards the community in a whole set of ways. And what are people going to do about that when they see the dog poo, when they see the fly tipping, when they see the litter, when they hear the motorbikes roaring past at all hours, when the fireworks are going off left, right and centre for a period of a fortnight, not just on one night? And sort of, who are they going to complain to? What are they going to say? And they do come to the councillors and they say, and it's not fair because what the hell can the councillors do about it except run round after have a councillor for every dog running around after it, just picking up food. And so, there's nothing you can do. But to be fair to those people, what can they do except sound off about it? because there's no solution to this apart from having a much more regimented and caring society.
Well, I think there is something we can do about this. So there's loads of jobs that are totally pointless, and there's loads of people who don't do any work. So if you brought in like a jobs guarantee scheme, then what you could do is like, get people to take a bit more pride and spend more time in the community, and therefore you would have people who could see people. And then what you would do is like, some people I know of have advocated. I'm not advocating for this, by the way. It's a horrible thing to do. But if they see someone's dog not being picked up, they pick it up and then they deliver it as a parcel to the home of that person. They follow them home and put it through their letterbox. And I have heard of that done. Now, I'm not advocating that, but it is an old-fashioned, like, we used to live on a shame system, didn't we? Like, in many, many years ago, before our time, before, like, in prehistoric times, and hunter-gatherer tribes and what have you still do this. They operate on a shame system, so shaming those people into changing their behaviour would be really good. You just have to have enough people shaming them. Or maybe I've watched too much Game of Thrones. I don't know. What
about a reward system that you get a $5 for every pile of poo you deliver? like returning your bottles to the shop. Or how about this? Having poo picker jobs, which are £85,000 a year.
Yes, love that. That'd be class.
You have to be elected by your community to be the poo picker.
I mean, there's a middle ground, though, isn't there? You can have, like, community wardens as a socially valuable job that pays a living wage that, people could do who, aren't going to be, hugely physically active or, it would suit a lot of different types of people. But we don't have that because it's not seen as a proper job,
This is linked in with a guaranteed job scheme in what do you call it? Oh, damn it, in what's that economics thing? Stephanie Kelton. Dear me, man. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Dear me, it's a whole branch of economics that's relatively new. Oh, dear me, man. Come on, I know this. Anyway, the idea would be to have a guaranteed job scheme where people would have a job, and this way you control the minimum wage as well. So if you've got your local community centre and says, right, these jobs are all pretty good, you can go into that, you will have a job if you want it, and then they go and pick a job off a shelf and say, right, I'm going to do that job, and they get paid for it well, then in order to do other jobs, you would have to be paid more than that. Therefore, you don't need minimum wage legislation anymore, because you've always got a good job, a guaranteed well-paid job, or at least enough paid job.
Can I be rude and just interrupt? I told for people who are listening, I told Sam I had to go at past, and sort of I got so excited about poo picking that I've overrun my time. So I'm going to now very rudely leave you all, and God bless you. See everybody next week. Sorry, Sam. Sorry to interrupt your discussion time.
No, that's fine.
Bye bye.
Do you need to change the frame, Paul? Are you changing the frame? You've done it already.
It's
just
done,
so efficient. Oh my gosh. It's really frustrating, this whole thing where people don't contact you when they're unhappy, and then you do a thing exactly like your Raylan's issue. You do a thing or you try and communicate with them, and the first thing they come at you with is, but haven't you done this? Why don't you do that? Yeah. Why haven't you done this? And you're just like, hang on a second. Because the thing is, right, what people forget is you're a human being, right? And it's really difficult to, I do try my best to, water off a duck's back. I know they're not shouting at me, they're shouting at the system. And but it is difficult. You're just like, oh, come on, just say you're happy for the thing that I just did. Because I did it on purpose and it took energy. And I could have been doing any of the other things that I've got to do. This morning, I was doing a walkabout around some alleyways that are a constant problem. We have a scheduled monthly multi-agency walkabout. This time, I had the police with me. I had Durham County Council anti-social behaviour officer with me, and another councillor doing a walk around. And the police turned the corner first, and they started talking to a member of the public. And I turned the corner just as this member of the public was saying, and the councillors round here, they never see them, they do now, they don't care. And I was really angry. And I'm like, do I not? What am I here for? I'm literally walking around the streets, taking photos. Well, naturally not taking photos of syringes. The police officer actually removed the syringe. Taking photos of bins and dog poo and in the rain. But obviously I don't care, and I do know. You know, I was so frustrated with it. But I think you do have to. Yeah, you've got to. I've got to do like a big embroidered piece of artwork that goes up here somewhere that says they're not shouting at you, they're shouting at the system.
If you like walking round Shildon and dog poo in the rain. Sorry, that song came into my head. Teesside Voice reminded me it's modern monetary theory that I'm talking about, so thank you. Yeah, it was modern monetary theory. That was the economic system I was talking about.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to write that song now, though.
Full song.
The whole song. With all of my spare time. There are a few other comments. There's somebody on YouTube said something. And I'm not going to be able to find them now. Yeah, Joe Apple Mac 08 on YouTube said socialism is popular, only 9 people watching. That's where you're wrong, Joe Apple Mac 08, because there may have only been 8 people watching on YouTube, but we are also on Facebook and Twitch and shared as a podcast. So there were many more than 8 people watching. And it's not just right now, it's not just live, it's spread it out through the fullness of time and space, because people can catch us up, watch us on catch up later. I'm doing a Boris Johnson thing, am I? Where I'm not quite saying things, but I'm styling it out. So there are a lot more than 8 people watch us, aren't there, Paul?
There are, yeah, there are. I wasn't going to bite to it, but well done. I'm glad you did.
There's a comment I wanted to mention off Neil. Well, there's a couple off Neil, actually. He's been on fire tonight. The PCS union is looking to take legal action over the government, basically over what's happened with the 27 people dying in the sea unnecessarily. So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, it will. Sorry, it's getting distracted. The deficit myth, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, modern monetary theory, Stephanie Kelton, the deficit myth. That was what I was talking about earlier on. But what Laura's talking about, the PCS union thing, is much further up. I think it was quite early on, was it?
Yeah, no, I think she's just said it, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I think honestly we should probably wind it up, because
also shout out to the fact that Neil. Norway. Sorry, Paul.
So no, it's all right. Sorry, I was going to let you go. I was just saying, Paul the Knights from Norway saying it's refreshing to see normal people like us lot. So that's quite nice.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's normal? In inverted commas, normal.
What is
yeah. No, we need to shout out the fact that Neil Terry worked with Velvet Revolver. How come that wasn't the first thing you told us when we met?
Oh, right.
I love people who just keep surprising you.
I know his young daughter, when she was a toddler, he took out to work and she pulled Slash's hair. I love her. That is a story. How come this is the first time I'm hearing it? Awesome.
Yeah, my husband is out tonight. Didn't know that was allowed, but apparently it is. He's out in Newcastle watching Steve Harris's band, Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, his band. So that's cool. Well done.
I think Chris is feeling left out because you haven't responded to him there.
Look, I really don't want to talk on our international show about the minutiae of Durham County Council politics. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the people on this panel probably won't have any idea what we're talking about when we talk about this survey about AAPs, because for some reason it's only been sent to councillors and not public reps and not.
I don't have a clue what he's talking about, to be honest.
Exactly. So it would just be a discussion between me and you then, Chris. So call me. Okay. So we are gonna go. We are tired. But thank you very much for joining us, or more than 8 of you, and see you joining us this time. Please come and see us again next week, Tuesday, on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and later on to catch up on all of those platforms and Twitter, and podcasts as well. Yay! Okay. Time to feed my brain some wine.
Expertly done. Everyone. I loved it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.